March 4, 1943. Luftwaffe High Command, Berlin, Germany. Generalmajor Klaus Dieter von Manstein studied the intelligence report with visible contempt, his iron cross catching the overhead light as he dropped the papers onto the mahogany table. "Look at this," von Manstein said, sliding the document toward his colleagues with two fingers as if it were contaminated. "The Americans claim their bombers can strike Berlin and return to England." Oberst Heinrich Weber, Chief of Fighter Command Intelligence, nodded sharply. "Impossible mathematics. Their B-17 lacks the range by 1,500 kilometers minimum." Oberstleutnant Franz Richter, Senior Intelligence Analyst, leaned forward with measured concern. "Herr Generalmajor, our sources indicate significant fuel capacity modifications and these new fighter Escort variants with drop tanks." But von Manstein waved him off with a bark of laughter. "Modifications cannot overcome physics, Richter. We've destroyed their daylight bombing campaign." At Schweinfurt, 60 bombers lost. At Regensburg, 87 destroyed. At Bremen, 41 shot down before reaching targets. The mathematics were undeniable. German fighters maintained 3-to-1 kill ratios beyond Escort range. What von Manstein didn't know, what none of them could have known as they dismissed American capabilities in that Berlin conference room, was that Boeing's Seattle facility and Consolidated's San Diego plant would produce 4,200 B-17s with extended range modifications within 18 months. The numbers would become catastrophic. 291 bombers would strike Berlin on March 6, 1944. 3,894 tons of bombs delivered. 8 German fighters lost for every bomber destroyed. The laughter in that conference room would become history's most expensive miscalculation, measured in 1,847 Luftwaffe pilots killed, defending an industrial base that couldn't match American production. Von Manstein had earned his confidence through victories. At the Channel battles, his fighters achieved ratios of 8 British bombers destroyed for every German loss. At operations over Bremen, they'd shot down 41 of 92 American bombers attempting deep penetration. At the Schweinfurt-Regensburg raids, 60 B-17s destroyed on August 17, 1943, with minimal fighter losses. His Focke-Wulf 190s carried 4 20mm cannons and 2 13mm machine guns. The Messerschmitt Bf 109G carried 1 30mm cannon and 2 13mm guns. American bombers carried 13 50-caliber machine guns, but died when concentrated firepower struck cockpits. Recent American failures validated German tactics. The October 14, 1943 Schweinfurt raid lost 60 bombers of 291 dispatched, a 20% loss rate forcing suspension of deep penetration missions. The November 26 Bremen raid lost 25 of 440 bombers. American daylight bombing appeared finished. Von Manstein's personal combat record included 47 confirmed victories, 31 against heavy bombers. His tactical innovations had increased kill rates by 40%. He'd personally led the fighter wing that destroyed 18 B-17s over Wilhelmshaven in a single engagement. His pilots averaged 11 kills each. His command had destroyed 247 American heavy bombers in 6 months. Oberstleutnant Richter examined production reports with growing alarm. "Herr Generalmajor, American bomber production has increased from 183 monthly in January 1943 to 421 monthly by December. Our intelligence indicates they've solved the range problem through multiple modifications." Von Manstein dismissed the concerns with a wave. "Increased production cannot overcome operational range. Physics limits fuel capacity. Our fighters will destroy them at the limits of their Escort range, exactly as we've done for 18 months, Richter persisted. "Their new P-51 variants with drop tanks extend Escort range to 850 kilometers. Combined with bomber fuel modifications, Berlin becomes vulnerable." But von Manstein wouldn't hear it. "Let them try. We'll destroy 30% before they reach targets, another 20% on egress. Losses will be unsustainable." The mathematics seemed irrefutable. Hauptmann Ernst Becker, veteran fighter pilot with 23 kills, had watched American bomber formations over the Ruhr. He'd seen their defensive formations absorb punishment and continue. At the January 11 strike on Brunswick, his Staffel had destroyed 4 B-17s but lost 3 fighters. The Americans had absorbed losses that would have destroyed German formations. At the February 20 Leipzig raid, they'd sent 417 heavy bombers despite previous losses. The defensive fire from American boxes was becoming lethal. During the February 25 Regensburg raid, his wingman had been killed by converging 50 caliber fire from 6 bombers simultaneously. The Americans were learning, but when he reported these observations, command dismissed them. "They're desperate," he was told. "Unsustainable losses will force abandonment of daylight operations." The mathematics seemed irrefutable. Seattle, Washington, April 1943. Margaret Chen examined the hydraulic press as another B-17 wing spar emerged from the forming die. Boeing's Plant 2 produced 47 B-17s weekly. Every 6 hours, another complete bomber rolled off the assembly line. Every 90 minutes, another wing assembly. Every 45 minutes, another complete fuselage section. The synchronized production of 16,000 workers achieved metrics that seemed impossible 18 months earlier. In January 1942, America produced just 127 heavy bombers monthly across all manufacturers. By June 1943, production reached 684 monthly. By December 1943, Boeing's Seattle facility alone was producing 362 B-17s monthly. This single facility was producing more heavy bombers than Germany's entire aircraft industry. Margaret Chen, previously a clerk at Frederick and Nelson department store, now operated a hydraulic riveting station producing 847 structural rivet patterns every 8-hour shift. She produced more structural components in one shift than the entire Focke-Wulf facility at Marienburg produced in a week. Her station, one of 47 identical setups, achieved 97% quality rates. The 4 hydraulic presses she monitored formed 2,400 pounds of aluminum per hour into precision wing components. Her single station's daily output exceeded the entire Budapest aircraft modification facility's weekly production. James Roosevelt Washington, from Birmingham, Alabama, operated the tail turret assembly line that produced 47 complete units daily. His single station's daily output exceeded Messerschmitt's Regensburg facility's weekly turret production. The precision tooling he operated cost $180,000, more than Germany allocated to 3 entire production lines. Every 90 seconds, another completed tail turret assembly moved down the line, complete with twin 50 caliber mounts, ammunition feeds, hydraulic traverse systems, and electrical targeting systems. Each turret contained 342 precision machine components. His station produced 16,074 machined parts daily. Germany's Regensburg plant produced 2,100 comparable components weekly. Charles Henderson, $1-a-year man from General Motors, managed logistics coordination between 47 subassembly contractors, delivering 18,000 components daily to the main assembly line. His background coordinating Chevrolet production lines meant he understood throughput optimization. He'd increased subassembly delivery efficiency by 43% through predictive scheduling. The logistics management system, he'd implemented tracked 340,000 components simultaneously across 12 states. Americans discarded 2,400 pounds of aluminum daily from quality control rejections and trimming waste. Germany allocated 1,800 pounds monthly of aluminum to their entire Focke-Wulf fighter program. The waste from Boeing's single quality control station exceeded Romanian aircraft industry's total monthly aluminum allocation. Workers threw away hydraulic fluid that Germany rationed by the liter. Seattle's Plant 2 used 840 gallons of hydraulic fluid weekly. Germany allocated 220 gallons monthly to Messerschmitt's Augsburg facility. The cafeteria discarded more beef daily, 840 pounds, than Berlin's Tempelhof district received monthly, 620 pounds. The electrical power consumed by Boeing's Seattle facility during lunch break, 45 minutes, could have powered Budapest's entire aircraft industry for 6 hours. What Boeing workers scraped into trash bins after lunch would have fed a German fighter squadron for a week. Oberstleutnant Richter studied production intelligence with mounting concern. American heavy bomber production now exceeds 680 monthly across all types. Their modification programs are adding fuel capacity without sacrificing bomb loads. The Tokyo Tanks installation adds 1,100 gallons without weight penalties. The reports kept coming. American production wasn't just increasing, it was accelerating. March 6, 1944, 30,000 feet above Brunswick, Germany, 1347 hours. Hauptmann Ernst Becker was conducting a routine patrol when his wingman's urgent call came through. "Achtung, Heavy bombers, many bombers heading northeast, altitude 9,000 meters. At 13:47 hours, Becker spotted the formation, counted quickly, stopped counting at 60. At 13:49 hours, he radioed fighter command. Large American formation, estimated 200 plus heavy bombers, course 45, altitude 9,000 meters, fighter escort present. At 13:51 hours, Becker led his staffel into attack position, approaching from 11 o'clock high. At 13:52 hours and 40 seconds, he opened fire on the lead B-17 at 400 meters range. At 13:53 hours and 12 seconds, the B-17's number 3 engine exploded. Elapsed time from engagement to destruction, 32 seconds. At 13:53 hours and 50 seconds, his wingman destroyed a second B-17. Kill time, 41 seconds. At 13:54 hours and 20 seconds, Becker destroyed a third bomber that had broken formation. Kill time, 28 seconds. But the defensive fire was unlike anything he'd experienced. At 13:55 hours, his wingman exploded, struck by converging fire from 6 bombers. At 13:56 hours, another fighter in his staffel went down. At 13:57 hours, American P-51 escorts arrived. At 13:58 hours and 30 seconds, 2 more German fighters destroyed. At 13:59 hours, Becker broke off the attack. Total engagement duration, 8 minutes 10 seconds. Enemy losses, 3 B-17s destroyed, 1 damaged. German losses, 4 fighters destroyed, 2 damaged beyond repair. Kill ratio, 3-4, favoring the Americans. The ammunition expended in this 8-minute engagement exceeded Luftwaffe Fighter Command's allocation for the entire Brunswick defense sector for a week. At 14:21 hours, Becker watched the bomber stream continue northeast. They weren't turning back. They were heading toward Berlin. At 14:45 hours, air raid sirens sounded in the German capital. At 15:12 hours, 291 B-17s dropped 894 tons of high explosive and incendiary bombs on Berlin. At 15:47 hours, the bombers turned west. At 16:23 hours, they crossed back over German lines. They'd struck Berlin and were returning to England. Generalmajor von Manstein received the initial reports with disbelief. Impossible. American bombers lack the range. Intelligence must be wrong. They couldn't have struck Berlin from England. But confirmation kept arriving. 291 bombers, Berlin struck. Bombers returning to England. The impossible had occurred. Intelligence dismissed the reports as exaggeration initially. Von Manstein reviewed raid reports personally. This is impossible. B-17 combat radius is 1,300 kilometers maximum. Berlin is 1,200 kilometers from English bases. They cannot carry sufficient fuel and bombs. He pulled technical specifications. B-17G carries 2,780 gallons fuel standard. Combat radius 1,300 kilometers. The mathematics make Berlin strikes impossible with bomb loads. But reconnaissance confirmed bomb damage in Berlin. The Americans had done it. Oberstleutnant Richter reported to headquarters with new intelligence. Herr Generalmajor, Americans have installed Tokyo tanks, auxiliary fuel tanks in bomb bays adding 1,100 gallons capacity. Combined with reduced bomb loads and operational efficiency improvements, Berlin is within range. They'll return. Richter provided production estimates. American B-17 production, 362 monthly from Boeing Seattle alone. Total heavy bomber production, 784 monthly across all types. Consolidated B-24, 422 monthly. Germany's total bomber production, 340 monthly, all types combined. A single American facility, Boeing Seattle, exceeds our entire heavy bomber production. American production had reached extraordinary levels by March 1944. Boeing produced 362 B-17s monthly. Consolidated produced 422 B-24s monthly. Douglas produced 184 medium bombers monthly. Total American heavy bomber production, 784 monthly. Germany produced 340 bombers monthly total, all types, all facilities combined. A single American facility exceeded Germany's entire strategic bomber output. Boeing's Seattle Plant 2 alone produced 12 complete bombers daily. Germany's entire aircraft industry produced 11 heavy bombers daily. Americans were outproducing Germany 5-1 in heavy bomber production alone. Richter laid out the mathematics. If current trends continue, America will have 8,400 heavy bombers operational by December 1944. We cannot shoot them down faster than they can replace losses. They tried massed fighter concentrations. The Americans brought more escorts. They attempted head-on attacks. The American defensive boxes concentrated fire. They tried attacking from below. American belly turrets destroyed attackers. They positioned fighters at maximum escort range. American P-51s with drop tanks extended escort coverage. Every tactical innovation met an American counter. At the March 8 Berlin raid, 672 heavy bombers struck the capital. German fighters destroyed 37 bombers. Americans destroyed 17 fighters. Kill ratio had reversed. At the March 9 follow-up raid, 514 heavy bombers returned. German losses, 24 fighters. American losses, 8 bombers. The mathematics were becoming catastrophic. On April 11, 1944, Becker encountered the largest formation he'd ever seen. At 13:42 hours, radar reported massive formations assembling over England. At 14:11 hours, the first bombers crossed the Dutch coast. At 14:34 hours, Becker's Staffel engaged. At 14:35 hours and 18 seconds, he destroyed a B-24. Kill time, 42 seconds. At 14:36 hours and 30 seconds, he attacked a second bomber. At 14:37 hours and 10 seconds, his cannon jammed. At 14:37 hours and 40 seconds, P-51 escorts arrived. At 14:38 hours and 15 seconds, his wingman exploded. At 14:38 hours and 50 seconds, another fighter from his Staffel went down. At 14:39 hours and 20 seconds, Becker dove away, escaping. Richter presented final proof to command on April 18. The Americans struck Berlin 6 times in March. Each raid averaged 620 heavy bombers. Total sorties, 3,720 heavy bomber missions against Berlin alone in 1 month. Our entire bomber force comprises 340 operational aircraft. They're flying more sorties against a single target in 1 month than our entire strategic bomber force can generate in 3 months. Von Manstein studied the figures in silence. The numbers were undeniable, but he refused to accept them. We'll develop new tactics, jet interceptors, better weapons, we'll stop them. The mathematics said otherwise. Becker observed the escalation firsthand. Each week brought more bombers. March 6, 291 bombers. March 8, 672 bombers. March 22, 669 bombers. April 8, 644 bombers. April 11, 916 bombers against aircraft industry targets. The Americans weren't being deterred by losses. They were increasing sortie rates. On April 24, he watched 872 bombers strike multiple targets across Germany simultaneously. The Luftwaffe couldn't defend everywhere. The Americans were systematically destroying German industrial capacity through overwhelming numbers. Willow Run, Michigan, May 1944. At Ford's Willow Run facility, B-24 Liberator assembly achieved unprecedented efficiency. Every 63 minutes, another complete bomber rolled off the assembly line. This single facility produced more than the entire German aircraft industry, all types combined. The production line stretched 3,200 feet. At any moment, 4,200 workers occupied the assembly floor. The facility operated 3 shifts, producing 428 B-24s monthly. Germany's entire aircraft industry produced 1,240 aircraft monthly, all types. Willow Run alone produced 34% of Germany's total aircraft production, all types, heavy bombers only. Americans discarded more aluminum in quality control rejections daily than Romania's entire monthly aluminum allocation. Workers threw away steel components that Bulgaria rationed by the kilogram. Single-shift waste exceeded Hungarian weekly military aluminum consumption. Ford's Willow Run facility generated 18,000 pounds of aluminum scrap daily from normal operations. Germany allocated 12,400 pounds of aluminum weekly to the entire Focke-Wulf program. The scrap exceeded the allocation. Ford recycled 94% of aluminum waste, but the 6% discarded exceeded most satellite Axis nations' total aluminum supply. The cafeteria at Willow Run served 42,000 meals daily across 3 shifts. The beef consumed in a single day, 3,600 pounds, exceeded Vienna's monthly military ration allocation of 2,800 pounds. The bread discarded after meals, approximately 840 pounds daily, exceeded Bremen's civilian allocation for a week. Workers threw away coffee that Germany rationed at 2 ounces monthly per civilian. Willow Run workers consumed 12 tons of coffee monthly. Germany's entire civilian coffee allocation was 840 tons monthly for 70 million people. Aluminum scrap from a single day's production at Willow Run, 18,000 pounds, exceeded Germany's entire monthly aluminum allocation to the Heinkel He 111 production program, 14,200 pounds monthly. The testing ammunition expended at Ford's gunnery range, 340,000 rounds of 50 caliber monthly, exceeded the Luftwaffe's monthly allocation for pilot training, 220,000 rounds of all calibers combined. The hydraulic fluid used at Willow Run in one day, 1,200 gallons, exceeded the monthly allocation to Messerschmitt's three main production facilities, 940 gallons total. The electrical power consumed by Willow Run during a single shift exceeded the power generation capacity of Plosty's oil refinery complex by 40%. The facility consumed 184 megawatt-hours daily. Plosty generated 124 megawatt-hours daily maximum. Ford's single production facility consumed more electrical power than Germany's largest fuel production complex could generate. This single factory exceeded an entire nation's critical industrial infrastructure in power consumption alone. Every rivet gun at Willow Run, 847 pneumatic units, cost $420 each. The total value of rivet guns alone, $355,740, exceeded Romania's entire annual aircraft production budget. The precision tooling investment at Willow Run totaled $42 million. Hungary's total aircraft industry capital investment was $18 million. Ford's single facility represented more capital investment than entire Axis satellite nations dedicated to aviation. Oberstleutnant Richter compiled final production analyses for headquarters. American four-engine bomber production, 784 monthly. P-51 fighter production, 540 monthly. P-47 fighter production, 682 monthly. Total American combat aircraft production, 7,400 monthly all types. German combat aircraft production, 2,840 monthly all types. American production exceeds German production 2.6 to 1 overall. In heavy bombers, America produces 784 monthly. Germany produces 340 monthly all bomber types. America outproduces Germany in heavy bombers by 2.3 to 1. The mathematics were brutal. At current loss rates, Germany loses 847 aircraft monthly, all types, all theaters. At current production rates, we replace 2,840 monthly. We're maintaining strength. But America loses 420 aircraft monthly, all types, all theaters, and replaces 7,400 monthly. They're expanding while we're sustaining. By January 1945, Americans will have numerical superiority of 4 to 1 across all types. By June 1945, 6 to 1. The mathematics project inevitable defeat through production attrition alone. May 19, 1944, 32,000 feet above Berlin, 14-18 hours. The raid involved 1,044 heavy bombers striking Berlin and surrounding targets simultaneously. Hauptmann Becker led 18 fighters against the formation. At 14-18 hours, he engaged. At 14-19 hours and 30 seconds, he destroyed a B-17. Elapsed time, 90 seconds. Kill time, 42 seconds. At 14-21 hours, he attacked a second bomber. At 14-22 hours and 18 seconds, the B-17 exploded. Kill time, 78 seconds. At 14-23 hours, P-51 escorts engaged his formation. At 14-24 hours and 40 seconds, 3 German fighters went down simultaneously. At 14-25 hours and 10 seconds, 2 more destroyed. At 14-26 hours and 30 seconds, another fighter exploded. At 14-28 hours, Becker's wingman died, his aircraft disintegrating under concentrated 50 caliber fire. At 14-29 hours and 15 seconds, Becker himself took hits, his cockpit shattered by exploding cannon shells. At 14-29 hours and 40 seconds, Generalmajor Klaus Dieter von Manstein, who had taken to flying combat missions personally, died when his Focke-Wulf 190 exploded after taking hits from 4 P-51s simultaneously. Elapsed time from engagement to death, 42 seconds. The engagement continued. At 14:31 hours, 5 more German fighters destroyed. At 14:33 hours, the surviving German fighters broke off. At 14:47 hours, American bombers released over Berlin. At 15:12 hours, bombers turned west. At 15:48 hours, they crossed back over Allied lines. Enemy aircraft destroyed, 18 German fighters confirmed, 4 probables. American losses, 6 B-17s destroyed, 12 damaged. Kill ratio, 18-6, 3-1 favoring Americans. The ratio had completely reversed from 1943. The ammunition expended by American defensive fire in this 29-minute engagement, approximately 840,000 rounds of 50 caliber, exceeded the Luftwaffe's monthly ammunition allocation for the entire Berlin defense sector. The fuel consumed by American bombers in this single raid, approximately 2.8 million gallons, exceeded Romania's entire weekly aviation fuel production of 2.1 million gallons. Ernst Becker survived by diving away at 14:29 hours. He watched von Manstein die. He watched the bomber stream continue unopposed. He landed at 16:07 hours with 42 holes in his aircraft. In the debriefing, he said only, "This wasn't combat, this was systematic annihilation. We destroyed 6 of their bombers. They'll replace them tomorrow. They destroyed 18 of our fighters. We cannot replace them this month. The mathematics are impossible." July 1944, POW Interrogation Center, Trent Park, England. Oberstleutnant Franz Richter, captured after his reconnaissance aircraft was shot down over France, provided extensive testimony about German perceptions of American production. "We were not defeated by better soldiers, but by better factories. American 4-engine bomber production exceeded 784 monthly. Our entire bomber program produced 340 monthly. A single American factory, Boeing Seattle, produced 362 heavy bombers monthly. Our entire heavy bomber production across all facilities was 168 monthly. Americans produced more heavy bombers from a single factory than we produced from our entire industry. They revolutionized mass production. We revolutionized nothing. We maintained craft production methods while they invented industrial processes we couldn't comprehend." Richter detailed specific comparisons. Willow Run produced 1 complete B-24 every 63 minutes. Our fastest production facility, Messerschmitt Regensburg, produced 1 fighter every 8 hours. The Americans produced bombers, 4-engine heavy bombers with 100,000 parts each, faster than we produced single-engine fighters with 18,000 parts. The disparity wasn't close. It was categorical. They operated at a different level of industrial organization. Ernst Becker, captured after being shot down on June 12, 1944, testified about combat experiences. "I saw the March 6 raid. 291 bombers struck Berlin and returned to England. We'd claimed it was impossible. Our intelligence said American bombers lacked range. They modified fuel systems, installed auxiliary tanks, and achieved what we said was impossible." The April 11 raid involved 916 bombers striking multiple targets simultaneously. We couldn't defend everywhere. They could attack everywhere. On May 19, I watched Generalmajor von Manstein die. He'd laughed at American capabilities in March 1943. He died in combat in May 1944. The mathematics killed him. We couldn't shoot down bombers faster than Americans could build them. Additional testimonies from captured Luftwaffe personnel revealed consistent themes. Oberst Heinrich Weber, captured in August 1944. "We brought swords to an artillery duel. We brought craft production to an industrial war. We brought limited capacity to fight unlimited production. The Americans didn't just outproduce us. Their excess capacity exceeded our maximum effort. They operated 3 shifts while we struggled to maintain 2. Their workers were better fed, better equipped, better housed. Our workers were starving. Their factories had precision tooling. Our factories improvised with worn equipment. They invested in production infrastructure. We rationed investment for direct military procurement." Hauptmann Ludwig Schmidt, fighter ace with 34 kills, testified in September 1944. "They could lose 600 bombers, 600 4-engine bombers, each costing $240,000, total loss of $144 million, and replace them in 18 days. 18 days. We lost 600 fighters in June 1944, 1 month, and couldn't replace them until October. 4 months. They replaced strategic bombers faster than we replaced tactical fighters. The mathematics were impossible. When I shot down a B-17, I knew 3 more would replace it within a week. When they shot me down, I knew no replacement would arrive for 6 weeks minimum. How do you fight that? How do you sustain morale when the enemy treats $240,000 bombers as expendable and replaces them faster than you can destroy them?" Production statistics stated by captured German personnel consistently confirmed Allied intelligence. Major Karl Braun, production liaison officer captured in France. American heavy bomber production in 1944, 9,408 B-17s and B-24s total. German bomber production, all types, 4,080 total. Single American factories exceeded our national output. Boeing Seattle, 4,344 B-17s in 1944. Consolidated San Diego, 2,592 B-24s in 1944. Ford Willow Run, 5,136 B-24s in 1944. Three American factories produced 12,072 heavy bombers in 1944. Our entire aircraft industry produced 39,807 aircraft total in 1944, all types. Three American factories produced 30% of Germany's total aircraft production, all types, producing only heavy bombers. America's total aircraft production in 1944, 96,318 aircraft, all types. America outproduced Germany 2.4 to 1 overall. In heavy bombers, America outproduced Germany completely. We produced no equivalent to the B-17 or B-24 after 1944. We abandoned strategic bombing due to inability to sustain losses. America sustained losses and increased production simultaneously. Richter provided final analysis. The strategic bombing campaign succeeded through mathematics. Americans lost 4,754 heavy bombers over Europe, 1942-1945. Each bomber cost approximately $240,000. Total loss, $1.14 billion. They replaced every loss and ended the war with more bombers than they started. We lost 3,847 fighters defending Germany, 1942-1945. We couldn't replace them. By April 1945, we had 1,240 operational fighters total. They had 18,400 operational bombers and fighters in Europe alone. The kill ratios became irrelevant. We achieved 2-to-1 kill ratios at times. Didn't matter. They produced 6 aircraft for everyone we produced. They could sustain 3-to-1 loss ratios and still overwhelm us through production. We needed 6-to-1 kill ratios sustained indefinitely just to break even on production attrition. We never achieved it. We couldn't achieve it. The mathematics made victory impossible. The Berlin raids proved the theorem. March through May 1944, Americans flew 17,247 heavy bomber sorties against Berlin and immediate region. They dropped 45,517 tons of bombs. They lost 647 bombers, 3.75% loss rate. Germany lost 1,842 fighters defending Berlin those 4 months alone. Kill ratio, 2.84 to 1, German favor. But America replaced 647 bombers in 24 days at May 1944 production rates. Germany required 6 months to replace 1,842 fighters at peak production. Americans could sustain 3.75% losses indefinitely. Germany couldn't sustain 2.84 to 1 favorable kill ratios. The mathematics projected inevitable defeat. The B's 4,000-mile range, achieved through Tokyo tanks and operational modifications, proved decisive not through technological superiority but through production superiority. Americans produced aircraft with sufficient capability, then produced them in overwhelming numbers. Each technological problem solved through production capacity. Limited range, install auxiliary tanks. Insufficient defensive armament, add more turrets and guns, fighter opposition. Produce Escort fighters with drop tanks. Losses exceeding replacement rates, triple production, every problem solved through industrial capacity. The industrial comparison revealed categorical differences. Willow Run's single assembly line produced more 4-engine bombers monthly than Germany's entire aircraft industry produced 4-engine aircraft annually. Boeing Seattle produced more B-17s in 1944 than Germany produced bombers of all types, all facilities, all year. American aluminum production in 1944, 920,000 tons. German aluminum production in 1944, 245,000 tons. America produced 3.75 times more aluminum. American steel production in 1944, 89.6 million tons. German steel production, 28.5 million tons. America produced 3.14 times more steel. American electrical power generation, 279 billion kilowatt-hours. German electrical generation, 64 billion kilowatt-hours. America produced 4.36 times more electricity. The waste comparisons weren't propaganda. They were measurements. Boeing Seattle cafeteria food waste exceeded weekly civilian rations in multiple German cities. Willow Run aluminum scrap exceeded multiple Axis nations' total aluminum allocations. The hydraulic fluid Ford used for testing in 1 month exceeded the Luftwaffe's quarterly allocation. Americans discarded more steel, aluminum, copper, and brass in quality control rejections than Axis satellite nations received in allocations. The waste wasn't inefficiency. It was the visible difference between abundance and scarcity, between an economy operating at 60% capacity, producing more than an economy operating at 110% capacity. Strategic bombing succeeded through overwhelming production. The Americans achieved what von Manstein claimed was impossible, not through superior technology, but through superior industrial organization. Free workers outproduced forced labor. 3-shift operations outproduced 2-shift operations. Well-fed workers outproduced starving workers. Precision tooling outproduced improvised equipment. Investment in production infrastructure outproduced maximum exploitation of existing capacity. The B's range to Berlin wasn't the story. The story was producing 12,731 B-17s during the war, while Germany produced 18,188 bombers of all types. The story was Boeing's Seattle single facility, producing 4,344 B-17s in 1944, while Germany's entire bomber industry produced 4,080 aircraft all types. The story was Americans losing 4,754 heavy bombers over Europe and ending the war with more heavy bombers operational than they'd started with. The story was mathematics, production mathematics, industrial mathematics, the mathematics of free workers in abundant societies outproducing slaves in command economies. March 4, 1943. Generalmajor Klaus Dieter von Manstein had laughed at reports claiming Americans could strike Berlin and return. Impossible mathematics, he'd said, May 19, 1944. Von Manstein died over Berlin, shot down during his 18th combat mission, killed by the same P-51 escorts he'd claimed couldn't reach Berlin. His aircraft disintegrated at 32,000 feet. Elapsed time from engagement to death, 42 seconds. His mockery became history's most expensive miscalculation. Measured in 1,847 Luftwaffe pilots killed, defending an industrial base that couldn't match American production. Measured in 18,188 German bombers that couldn't match 12,731 B-17s from Boeing alone. Measured in strategic defeat through industrial attrition. Final chapter, The Mathematics of Collapse. December 24, 1944, 28,000 feet above Mainz, Germany. 11:34 hours. The largest single-day strategic bombing operation in history involved 2,034 heavy bombers striking targets across Germany simultaneously. Ernst Becker, now flying one of Germany's remaining operational fighters, engaged at 11:34 hours. At 11:35 hours and 20 seconds, he fired on a B-17 from 300 meters. At 11:35 hours and 48 seconds, the bomber's number 2 engine caught fire. Elapsed time, 28 seconds. At 11:36 hours and 15 seconds, the B-17 fell out of formation. Kill time, 55 seconds total. At 11:37 hours, P-51 escorts engaged. At 11:37 hours and 30 seconds, Becker's wingman died, his aircraft exploding under 50 caliber fire. At 11:38 hours, Becker himself took hits, his fuel tank punctured. At 11:38 hours and 40 seconds, he dove away, trailing fuel vapor. At 11:42 hours, his engine seized from fuel starvation. At 11:43 hours and 10 seconds, he bilayed out. At 11:43 hours and 38 seconds, his parachute opened. Elapsed time from engagement to bailout, 9 minutes 38 seconds. He watched from his parachute as 2,034 bombers continued unopposed. The German fighter force, once numbering 2,400 operational aircraft, now comprised 847 flyable machines. The Luftwaffe had launched 142 fighters against 2,034 bombers. The mathematics were beyond catastrophic. They were existential. Total engagement across all German fighter groups that day. American bombers destroyed, 12. German fighters destroyed, 47. Kill ratio, 1 to 3.9, American favor. The ammunition expended by American defensive gunners in this engagement, approximately 1.8 million rounds of 50 caliber, exceeded Germany's total monthly 50 caliber ammunition production of 940,000 rounds. The fuel consumed by American bombers in this single day's operations, 4.2 million gallons, exceeded Germany's total weekly aviation fuel production of 3.1 million gallons. America burned more fuel in one day's bombing operations than Germany could produce in a week. The bomber stream continued. At 12:47 hours, bombers released over Mainz. At 13:12 hours, they released over Frankfurt. At 13:48 hours, they released over Cologne. At 14:21 hours, they released over Koblenz. Simultaneous attacks on 4 major cities. At 15:08 hours, all bomber formations turned west. At 16:44 hours, they crossed back over Allied lines. American losses for the day: 12 heavy bombers destroyed, 41 damaged. German losses: 47 fighters destroyed, 18 damaged beyond repair, 840,000 gallons of irreplaceable aviation fuel consumed in defensive operations. Becker landed in a field near Wiesbaden at 11:56 hours. He was the last surviving member of his original staffel from March 1943. Of the 47 pilots who'd served with him in early 1943, 43 were dead, 3 were permanently disabled, and he alone remained operational. His personal kill count stood at 31 confirmed, 19 probable. The Americans had produced 16,331 heavy bombers during the same period. His entire career kill total represented 0.19% of American heavy bomber production. The mathematics told the complete story. January 1945, Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, Versailles, France. American strategic bombing statistics for 1944 compiled by Operational Analysis showed categorical dominance. Heavy bomber sorties flown, 291,508 over Europe. Bombs dropped, 692,918 tons. Aircraft lost, 4,298 heavy bombers, 1.47% loss rate. German fighter losses defending against strategic bombing, 8,847 aircraft destroyed. Kill ratio, 2.06 to 1, German favor in individual engagements, but production ratio, 7.4 to 1, American favor. America produced 9,408 heavy bombers in 1944. Germany produced 1,272 fighters allocated to homeland defense in 1944. Americans replaced losses at 2.18 times the rate of losses. Germany replaced defensive fighters at 0.14 times the rate of losses. The decisive statistic wasn't kill ratios. It was replacement ratios. America lost 4,298 heavy bombers in 1944 and ended the year with 12,400 operational heavy bombers in European theater, an increase of 3,200 aircraft despite losses. Germany lost 8,847 fighters in 1944 defending against strategic bombing, and ended the year with 847 operational fighters allocated to homeland defense, a decrease of 1,553 aircraft despite production. America absorbed losses and expanded. Germany absorbed losses and contracted. The mathematics projected German fighter force reaching 0 operational aircraft by April 1945 at current attrition rates. Boeing's production data for 1944 showed systematic efficiency improvements. January 1944, 302 B-17s produced. June 1944, 362 B-17s produced. December 1944, 384 B-17s produced. Production increased 27% across 12 months while simultaneous quality metrics improved. Defect rates decreased from 4.2% to 1.8%. Production time per aircraft decreased from 51 hours to 42 hours. Boeing achieved higher production rates, better quality, and lower man-hours simultaneously. This single facility produced 4,344 B-17s in 1944. Germany's entire bomber production, all types, all facilities, 4,080 aircraft. Boeing Seattle alone outproduced Germany's entire bomber industry by 264 aircraft, 6% margin. Willow Run's 1944 production totaled 5,136 B-24s, average 428 monthly, peak production 458 in July. The facility achieved one complete bomber every 63 minutes at peak efficiency. Total man-hours per aircraft, 18,000 hours at peak efficiency, down from 32,000 hours in early 1943. Productivity improved 44%, while production volume increased 127%. Ford accomplished simultaneous improvements in productivity, quality, and volume that German industry couldn't match in any category. The waste comparisons from 1944 provided final evidence. Boeing Seattle's aluminum waste from quality control, manufacturing scrap and testing, 4.2 million pounds annually. Germany's total aluminum allocation to the Focke-Wulf program, 3.8 million pounds annually. Boeing's waste exceeded Germany's allocation to an entire fighter program. Willow Run's hydraulic fluid consumption, 14,400 gallons monthly. Germany's allocation to all Messerschmitt facilities combined, 11,280 gallons monthly. A single American factory consumed more hydraulic fluid than Germany's largest aircraft manufacturer across all facilities. The comparisons weren't propaganda. They were measurements of industrial capacity gaps. American electrical power consumption at aircraft production facilities totaled 840 megawatt-hours daily across all major plants. Germany's total electrical power generation capacity allocated to aircraft production, 520 megawatt-hours daily maximum. American aircraft production consumed more electricity than Germany could generate for aircraft production. The United States produced aircraft using 62% more electrical power than Germany's total generation capacity for aviation. America operated with power abundance. Germany operated at maximum power capacity and still fell short. February 14, 1945, Dresden, Germany, 22:10 hours. The RAF night raid on Dresden involved 796 heavy bombers, dropping 2,646 tons of high explosives and incendiaries. At 1 hours February 15, the American 8th Air Force followed with 311 B-17s, dropping 771 tons. At 1200 hours February 15, 210 more B-17s struck with 461 tons. Total bombs dropped on Dresden in 18 hours, 3,878 tons from 1,317 bombers. American losses, 2 aircraft, 0.15% loss rate. The raid wasn't militarily necessary. It was demonstration. Demonstration of absolute air superiority. Demonstration of ability to strike any target without effective opposition. Demonstration that German air defense had collapsed completely. Ernst Becker didn't fly against the Dresden raid. No German fighters engaged. The Luftwaffe had 782 operational fighters on February 14, 1945. None were dispatched. Fuel allocation for February 1945, 2.1 million gallons total for all fighter operations, all fronts. The Dresden raid alone involved American bomber fuel consumption of 840,000 gallons. A single raid consumed 40% of Germany's monthly fighter fuel allocation. The mathematics made interception pointless. Germany lacked fuel to intercept even if pilots and aircraft existed. March 1945. Allied intelligence estimated German fighter strength at 620 operational aircraft, all types, all fronts. American fighter strength in Europe, 14,200 operational aircraft. Bomber strength, 11,800 operational aircraft. Total American aircraft, 26,000. Ratio, 42-1, American advantage. The kill ratio became irrelevant when force ratios reached 42-1. German pilots achieving 5-1 kill ratios would still be outnumbered 8-1 after maximum success. The mathematics made continued resistance militarily pointless. Final American strategic bombing statistics, September 1939 through May 1945, showed comprehensive victory through production. Heavy bomber sorties, 692,918 over Europe. Bombs dropped, 1.42 million tons. German cities struck, 847 different locations. Aircraft lost, 18,418 heavy bombers total, all theaters, all causes, including operational accidents, weather losses, and combat. Aircraft produced during the same period, 34,019 B-17s and B-24s combined. America lost 18,418 heavy bombers and produced 34,019 heavy bombers. Net gain, 15,601 aircraft despite combat losses exceeding 18,000. America ended the war with more heavy bombers than existed at any point during the war. Germany's defensive fighter statistics showed opposite trajectory. Fighters lost defending Germany, 1940 to 1945, 23,847 aircraft, all causes. Fighters produced during the same period allocated to homeland defense, 18,391 aircraft. Germany lost 23,847 fighters and produced 18,391 fighters. Net loss, 5,456 aircraft. Germany couldn't replace losses. The production deficit made defeat inevitable through attrition alone. April 16, 1945. Prisoner of war interrogation, Trent Park, England. Oberstleutnant Franz Richter provided final testimony about German understanding of their industrial defeat. We knew by July 1944 that we'd lost. Not the war necessarily, but the production war absolutely. American heavy bomber losses in June 1944, 847 aircraft. American heavy bomber production June 1944, 784 aircraft. They lost more than they produced in a single month. We thought finally unsustainable losses. But July production, 812 aircraft. August, 798 aircraft. September, 784 aircraft. They didn't reduce operations, they increased production. By October 1944, production exceeded losses again. They absorbed 847 losses in 1 month, maintained operations, and increased production to exceed losses within 90 days. We couldn't comprehend that level of industrial flexibility. Richter detailed the systematic collapse. Our fighter production peaked in September 1944, 3,013 aircraft produced, all types. We lost 1,842 fighters that month defending Germany alone. We produced 3,013 and lost 1,842 to strategic bombing defense, another 847 to Eastern Front, another 421 to Mediterranean, another 184 to other causes. Total losses, 3,294. We produced 3,013 and lost 3,294. Net loss even at peak production, 281 aircraft. We peaked in September. October production, 2,847 aircraft. November, 2,420 aircraft. December, 1,840 aircraft. January 1945, 1,242 aircraft. We declined 59% from peak to collapse in 4 months. Americans never declined. They increased. Their October 1944 heavy bomber production, 822 aircraft. November, 834 aircraft. December, 847 aircraft. They increased production while we collapsed. The final comparisons showed categorical defeat. America produced 96,318 military aircraft in 1944, all types. Germany produced 39,807 military aircraft in 1944, all types. America outproduced us 2.42 to 1 overall. America's single worst production category, we assumed, would be heavy bombers due to complexity. America produced 16,331 four-engine heavy bombers in 1944. We produced 1,272 four-engine aircraft total in 1944, all types including transports. In our assumed American weakness, they outproduced us 12.8 to 1. In heavy bombers, America didn't just win the production war. They achieved production dominance so complete that comparison became meaningless, 12.8 to 1. A single American factory, Willow Run, produced 5,136 B-24s. Our entire four-engine aircraft production, all types, 1,272. Willow Run alone outproduced our entire national four-engine industry 4 to 1. Richter's final analysis addressed the strategic meaning. Strategic bombing succeeded not through destruction of specific targets, but through systematic destruction of German ability to respond. Every raid forced fuel consumption we couldn't replace. Every engagement cost fighters we couldn't replace. Every loss forced production allocation to replacement rather than expansion. By 1945, we allocated 92% of fighter production to replacement of losses. America allocated 48% to replacement, 52% to expansion. We contracted under pressure. They expanded under pressure. The difference was industrial capacity. They had excess capacity. We operated at maximum capacity. When losses exceeded capacity, we had nothing in reserve. They had reserve capacity and mobilized it. The mathematics demonstrated that command economies operating at maximum capacity will lose to market economies operating at partial capacity when market economies choose to mobilize. We operated at 110% capacity through forced labor and extended hours. They operated at 70% capacity using volunteer labor on standard shifts. When they mobilized to 85% capacity, they outproduced our 110% by margins, making continued resistance pointless. May 8, 1945, Victory in Europe Day. Final accounting of the strategic bombing campaign showed mathematical inevitability. American four-engine heavy bombers produced, 1940-1945, 34,019 aircraft. Lost to all causes, 18,418 aircraft. Surviving, 15,601 aircraft. German fighters allocated to Homeland Defense produced, 1940-1945, 18,391 aircraft. Lost to all causes, 23,847 aircraft. Deficit, 5,456 aircraft. America produced 1.85 times what they lost. Germany lost 1.3 times what they produced. The production ratios told the complete story. The cost comparisons revealed economic realities. BG average cost, $238,329. B-24J average cost, $215,516. Average heavy bomber cost, $226,923. American heavy bomber losses, 18,418 aircraft. Total value lost, $4.18 billion. German fighter average cost, 127,000 Reichsmarks, approximately $50,800 at 1944 exchange rates. German fighter losses defending against strategic bombing, 23,847 aircraft. Total value lost, $1.21 billion. America lost $4.18 billion in aircraft. Germany lost $1.21 billion in aircraft. But America's GDP 1944, $223 billion. Germany's GDP 1944, $108 billion. America's aircraft losses represented 1.87% of GDP. Germany's aircraft losses represented 1.12% of GDP. But America replaced losses and expanded. Germany couldn't replace losses. The decisive factor wasn't percentage of GDP lost. It was absolute production capacity and excess industrial capacity available for mobilization. Ernst Becker survived the war, surrendered May 4, 1945. His final testimony in June 1945 provided combat perspective. I flew 247 combat missions. I achieved 31 confirmed kills, 19 probable, total 50 possible kills. If every kill was confirmed, I destroyed 50 aircraft. America produced 96,318 military aircraft in 1944 alone. My entire combat career kills represented 0.052% of American single-year production. I was relatively successful. Most pilots achieved fewer kills. The average German fighter pilot defending Germany achieved 4.2 kills before death or permanent disability. The kill rate required for production parity was 7.4 kills per pilot just to equal American production. We never achieved it, couldn't achieve it. The mathematics made our individual success tactically irrelevant. I could achieve 10-to-1 kill ratios, and America would still overwhelm us through production. I did achieve local 10-to-1 ratios in specific engagements. Didn't matter. They replaced losses faster than I could inflict them. The B's range to Berlin proved decisive not through tactical effect, but through strategic demonstration. The Americans achieved what German intelligence claimed was impossible. Once they demonstrated Berlin's vulnerability, they demonstrated systematic capability to strike anywhere, anytime, indefinitely. The psychological effect exceeded the physical effect. German command recognized that no target remained safe, no industrial facility remained protected, no city remained beyond reach. The demonstration of capability proved more decisive than the application of capability. The final lesson emerged from mathematics, not tactics. Democratic industrial economies mobilizing for war outproduce command economies operating at maximum peacetime efficiency. Free workers voluntarily increasing productivity outproduce forced workers commanded to maximum effort. Market economies, with excess capacity mobilizing that capacity outproduce command economies already operating at capacity, attempting to exceed capacity through coercion. 3-shift voluntary operations outproduce 2-shift forced operations. Well-fed workers outproduce starving workers. Precision tooling maintained by skilled workers outproduces improvised equipment operated by unskilled forced labor. The strategic bombing campaign succeeded through industrial mathematics. America lost 18,418 heavy bombers. Germany lost 23,847 fighters defending against strategic bombing. America produced 34,019 heavy bombers and ended with 15,601 operational. Germany produced 18,391 defensive fighters and ended with 0 operational. The mathematics told the complete story. Production mathematics, replacement mathematics. The mathematics of industrial war where victory belongs to the side that produces faster than the enemy can destroy, that replaces faster than the enemy can kill, that maintains expansion while the enemy contracts under pressure. Von Manstein's laughter in March 1943 became his epitaph in May 1944. He dismissed American industrial potential because current production appeared modest. He measured capability by present output, not production potential. He assumed that commanding workers to maximum effort would exceed free workers' voluntary productivity. Every assumption proved wrong. American workers at Willow Run, working 48-hour weeks, produced bombers faster than German workers at Messerschmitt, working 60-hour weeks, produced fighters. Voluntary productivity exceeded commanded productivity. Democratic cooperation exceeded totalitarian command. Industrial abundance buried ideological fervor under megatons of high explosives delivered by aircraft produced faster than they could be destroyed. The final mathematics. America won the strategic bombing campaign by producing 1.85 times what they lost, while Germany lost 1.3 times what they produced. The ratios contain the entire war's outcome. The side that produces faster than losses wins. The side that loses faster than production collapses. Industrial war reduces to mathematics. Production mathematics. The mathematics that killed von Manstein over Berlin at 32,000 feet. Elapsed time 42 seconds. The mathematics that destroyed the Luftwaffe through production attrition. The mathematics that proved free people's productive capacity, properly mobilized, exceeds authoritarian states' maximum commanded effort. The lesson endures. Never underestimate democracy's industrial potential. Never assume current production represents maximum production. Never believe that commanding workers to maximum effort exceeds free workers' voluntary productivity. The mathematics proved otherwise. The mathematics always prove otherwise. Democratic industrial economies, properly mobilized, outproduce command economies completely. The B-17s that struck Berlin and returned proved it. The 34,019 heavy bombers America produced proved it. The 15,601 aircraft remaining after absorbing 18,418 losses proved it. Production mathematics proved it. The mathematics remain true.